you check the children? Show a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Bienvenidos, Fright fans, and welcome to the Horror Show. I am Jaime and Fuego, and so very stoked to be here doing a new in-theater review for everybody out there in the interwebs here for the channel. And yeah, so this is one that had been on the horror radar as far as like the bigger outlets go, you know, Bloody Disgusting, you know, Daily Dead, Shudder, Fangoria, whatever. And it's a film that I guess was on the festival circuit as far back as like almost 2 years ago, and it's a flick called Out of Darkness. And so this is, it takes place, I'm trying to remember if it's 45,000 BC or 40,000 BC, but essentially prehistoric times, and we have a small group of humans that are foraging, trying to, you know, like survive in any way that they can. And so for that reason, you know, if I'm giving like overall thoughts about this, first and foremost, from a production standpoint, you can definitely tell why they wanted to get this into theaters, and just the ability to see it on a big screen is fairly crucial because of the fact that the cinematography is gorgeous. It's a Scottish film, if I'm not mistaken, based on some of the introductory credits that, you know, were presented to all of us, before things actually got going. And so the landscapes are breathtaking. We're talking like, you know, caves with like fog, and, you know, just like these beautiful sprawling locales of like rocks and woods, and, you know, you get some beach stuff as well. And so, I mean, from a location scouting standpoint, this film is breathtaking. All the performances are fairly solid. It was really the fact that the story was a little bit paper thin, and also with the manner in which that they're advertising it. I don't want to, they're kind of advertising it as one thing when it's not as much that thing as I was anticipating. But unfortunately, if I was gonna like really go into full-on details, which I suppose I have to at the very end, so spoilers, we don't always do that at the very end, but when it's kind of a crucial aspect to the enjoyment of the film, as it is in this case, I feel like it kind of has to be done, so I'll hold off on that until the end. But, you know, I enjoyed this movie. I did. Now, I was pretty pumped on it based on concept, and so execution in most of the ways I was pretty impressed by, especially with the sheer fact that it's obvious that this was made on a lower budget. This is renegade independent filmmaking at its finest, but they used great film grade digital film, you know, however they shot it, so it looks great. And, you know, costuming is pretty good, although I'll get into some gripes about that here a little bit later on. But, so yeah, this is one that I would definitely recommend, and well, it's one of those kind of balance acts, though, because of the fact that it, based on the cinematography I mentioned, feels like it needs to be seen on a big screen. And yet, it's only around 80-something minutes, and so I don't know if this would be like a full price recommendation, you know, go out to, you know, an evening or weekend sort of show and spend like, you know, 12, 15 bucks. I don't know if I would go that far. This is more like a, you know, if you have a day off in the middle of the week, or, you know, Saturday matinee sort of situation, to hit up the AMC Tuesdays where everything's like $5 or whatever. So that's more so where I would say the theatrical experience enhanced my enjoyment of it, and yet I don't know if it's good enough as far as everything else beyond seeing it on a big screen to really warrant a higher price tag for viewership. So, okay, in any event, so to hit the story up, so yes, like I said, like 45,000 BC, somewhere-ish around there, 40-ish thousand BC, so we're talking humans have evolved enough where they have a dialect which they do speak, and from the best that I could gauge, it was created specifically for this film. And so yeah, it says I'm trying to remember if it says Aboriginal dialect or alternate dialect, but when I was booking my seat on AMC, it was like I should actually just double check, because that would be kind of interesting. But it is a fully subtitled sort of situation for this film, and so that's something that I know is off-putting for certain folkies, and so I want to, I'm just curious if I can bring this up really, really quickly. I know that is an off-putting sort of situation for some, and it's something that I really wish more people were able to get past. So it says artificial languages spoken with English subtitles. So yeah, it was a dialect that was created specifically for this film, but it doesn't seem goofy or forced or anything like that. It felt very natural, and it was delivered based on the performances of our actors with, you know, sincerity and confidence, and also, you know, bits of, what's the word I'm looking for, vulnerability in the cases when it was necessary with some of the story beats that transpire. But It all begins with, you meet this group of, I'm trying to remember, it's 5 or 6 of them, because you have a brother, older brother, who is like the leader, and then you have his younger brother, and then you have the older brother's son, and apparently his wife was lost at one particular point because he has a new woman who is with, and the new woman who is with, he actually has another baby up in her too, and then there is a stray, as they call her, who is kind of the love interest of the younger brother, and then there was also like this older sage elder sort of guy who was along with them. So yes, it is a band of 6 in this particular bit, and so they're telling like campfire tales at the very beginning of the film, and so the son of the older brother, the leader of this this ragtag band of prehistoric humans, he asks the new kind of stand-in mom to tell him a story, and she's like, "I'm not your mom," whatever. And so the elder, the oldest of the group, starts telling a tale, and he's essentially recanting the journey that they have been on thus far, and yet it's not incredibly obvious, at least initially. And it's when he segues into some criticism about how things have gone. You know, he's like, oh, the hero, you know, wanted to take this group back to the land of, you know, where his youth was, and so on and so forth, and it's going to be so prosperous, and it's going to be a great change of, you know, setting and scenario, and there will be food, and then all this other stuff. And apparently that journey had not gone so well, despite all of the big promises that older brother, hero, leader had made. And so elder guy starts heaping some criticism on the situation, and yeah, they obviously have to keep moving because they need to find something to eat. Most importantly, for the new love interest of the older brother who is pregnant, because obviously she can't maintain a growing child, and she's like basically like, she seems like she's ovulating, you know, or at least getting like, you know, mild contractions a few different points early. And I forget how it all goes, having not been a father and been in that said situation myself, but you can tell she is like, she's right there, ready to have this child, not just based on size, but based on some of the just, I don't know, things that she is experiencing. I don't want to say something like symptoms, like, you know, pregnancy is an affliction. We're not going all like alien status about it, you know, the parasite that's in me that's taking all of my nourishment and my sustenance and whatnot. But yeah, she's getting sickly, and so they need to find some food, and they are not having any success. And so they start venturing further, and they get to this point where they're like, okay, we can either go through this forest, this very dense forest, or we can go around, which would add a lot of additional travel time and, of course, the duress on the pregnant woman. And so initially they think they're going to go around, and that's where the things in the trailer start to manifest themselves, because the group is attacked. And, you know, there is a superstitious side of things where they're like, okay, you know, is it demons attacking us? Is it a wild animal? They find from the best of what I could describe it as, it looks like the remnants of a woolly mammoth, and because you see the big tusks and everything, and you see some of the like fur and blood and stuff, and so they're trying to figure out who could have done this, what could have done this, and so they're thinking that there is a creature, demon, monster, you know, whatever, and so there's a disagreement amongst them as to what could be doing this. And then, of course, their group starts to get attacked as they're sitting around like the fire and trying to, you know, game plan as to what they're going to do. And that's about as far as I can go, because it really boils down to, as the group starts to get thinned out a little bit, and there's only 6 of them, like I said, so, you know, not really a ton, not like a high body count sort of situation, if that's what you may be thinking based on trailers. It's not that, and that's not really, I don't feel that's like a super spoiler, because it is a smaller group of people. But yeah, it's just really trying to figure out the nature of, you know, the attacks and what is purporting them, but, you know, the responsibility factor. And then also the infighting amongst them, as far as when, you know, leadership dynamics are altered and, you know, disagreements amongst them. This is really, at the end of the day, it's not full-on horror, despite being presented as such in the trailers. This is more, I would say, survival thriller. If you're, you know, anybody familiar with that sort of subgenre will obviously know what I'm talking about. So I enjoyed it, and yet I had some criticisms about the thinner sort of script. And once again, it is only like a little over 80 minutes, so it's not even an hour and a half, which is good, I think. But so it's a little disorganized at times. But I feel like, you know, the person I saw it with mentioned that, okay, well, there was still so much formative going down with people at this particular point in human history, and so the disorganization, the lack of intelligence, whatever, is kind of understandable because of the fact that everything was still so new and intellects were being developed and, you know, whatever. And so, Yeah, the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty and not a lot of like really sharp planning or anything kind of makes sense to a degree. So I can understand that justification, but for me, it's just really the third act and some of the reveals that diminish the just higher rating of this for me. But yeah, not going to spoil anything till the very end when I give some thoughts there. But as far as the acting goes, though, I thought acting from everybody involved, from all 6 of our peeps in this group, was all very strong. There's a brash kind of arrogance to the older brother, the leader of the crew. The critical sort of I'm the elder that's not going to cut you any slack sort of situation from the older guy who's in the group. He was good. There is a bitchiness to the new love interest of the older brother who's the leader of the group. She has some issues with the stray, the younger girl who just starts menstruating like right at the very beginning, and so there's worry about the bleeding aspect and how that could be potentially drawing whatever is attacking them, to their encampment as they're moving around and whatnot. And just Out of Darkness, though, I do really think is an interesting title because of the fact that a lot of the film is spent around the campfire and it's very low light aside from our actors, and I guess I'll get into that a little bit more when I'm hitting cinematography and effects and the way the film is shot and whatnot. But there's not really a weak performance in the group in my estimation. The Stray is kind of our final girl of sorts, and she's solid. And the only one maybe, I guess the son of the older brother, and then the younger of the 2 siblings, the one who's the love interest of the Stray, he's just okay, but he's younger. He's more naive. He's more, he's a little more timid too. He doesn't have like the strength and just the, he's not as fearless as his older brother, I guess. And so, but yeah, not really a bad performance amongst all of them, I gotta say. Yeah, I guess, segueing into, I praise the cinematography significantly. It is a gorgeous looking film, and that's where you can really get by with a meager budget if you have these amazing locations. And I'm guessing, with all the credits at the beginning and, Film Scotland and whatever, like they chose some unbelievable looking spots in that area of Europe to actually film this. And especially in the third act when we get to some of these caves and whatnot, and just breathtaking visages, and just it adds an essence of just wonder, but also, depending on the circumstance, eeriness too. Lighting was done top notch just to be able to have the lighting of the fire, and based on the way some of the shadowing worked on these characters, I'm guessing they didn't really film with much additional stuff beyond that. So it was a very well-made movie, despite a presumed meager budget. It's smaller on that side of the amount of money that they had to work with. So good in that regard. And then there is it's not a lot of gore, but there is one particular bit about halfway through that is quite impressive as far as what has happened to a character. Pieces missing, so to speak, which was pretty well done. It is kind of the showcase scene within the film, is the best that I could say with regards to that. And also the aforementioned woolly mammoth bit, where you see just, the bones and some of the, clumps of blood and fur and whatnot. That just the scale of what they obviously had to create to show the size of this deceased carcass and what was left of it. So well done as far as working with a small amount to really just make this larger than life and feel like you're transported back to this particular time. When I mentioned the costuming earlier, though, my criticism is the fact that, this animal fur and things that they're wearing, it didn't really look quite as worn in as I felt like with the extent of the journey that is mentioned that they have been on, going across the sea and all this different stuff. Like, yeah, it looked too new. It looked very much like created costuming in a lot of ways, as opposed to something that was, just, I don't know, it didn't look as lived in and as like beaten up and dirty and stuff. Yes, they dirty up their faces, and the teeth aren't like squeaky white clean for the most part, like I've seen in some of these films, like the other BC movie that I'm trying to remember if it was done by Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. I think that it was, but yeah, man. I mean, this was still a rather solid entry from everything except for some aspects of the story, and this is where I have to go into spoilers. Okay, so spoilers. Gonna wait a few minutes. Spoilers. I have to spoil what I found off-putting about this movie, and it may be forgivable for some. Spoilers, but this is a bait and switch, everybody. They are advertising this on Bloody Disgusting and all of those other outlets that I mentioned as being a presumed creature feature. This is not a creature feature. Nope, they villaged this shizzle, everybody. Yeah, they made you think it was one thing with the nature of the attacks, especially what happens to the older brother and the pieces of him missing. And I did really like the bit that they're like, okay, we need to feed the pregnant woman, and so they're like, yeah, we'll just eat him. And the younger brother being very averse to doing that and not giving in. I thought that whole, like, those story beats I thought were some of the most compelling aspects of it. But yeah, you finally get the reveal that these are just other prehistoric people, and they're the ones responsible for the attack. And I also really didn't like the fact that they just kidnapped the younger brother because they were trying to protect him. Protect him from what? They also give the implication, or the indication, I should say, that like they were a cave-dwelling society, these few people that you encounter, and you know, they have like they are doing like cave drawings and whatnot, so they are presumably more advanced than our band of 6 that they encounter. So I don't know, man. I had issues with the way this pans out, although I did like what the Stray does when she realizes, yeah, they were just like us, and the son that you find out was actually not killed. You know, the son was actually just taken to be protected and whatever by these cave dwellers that felt threatened because this group had infringed on their territory or whatever. But she's like, nope, with what y'all did, I'm just gonna fucking kill you. And so stab, smash, and yet that is the thing. Working with the lower budget, they had that money shot about halfway through with what happens to the older brother. But aside from that, everything else is camera cuts away, so you don't see the impalement. You don't see the head being bashed inside the cave, really. I mean, I guess there is one quick shot, but it's not high up in the gore department. It's just not. And so that's you know, something to keep in mind. And so the spoilers really are for those that you could still, even with me spoiling this to you, I think find enjoyment within this film. And so that's about all that I can say with regards to that, because it was very adeptly and expertly made, despite the fact that they didn't have a lot of Skrilla to actually put this together. I was impressed with a lot of this movie, but yet that doesn't mean that it was not without its problems, everyone. So, I extend a grande gracias up at Jaime and Fuego, and you have been here on The Horror Show with us, so very appreciative for you hearing my thoughts on Out of Darkness. It is currently in theaters, and I believe it's only in theaters. I don't think this was a dual in-theater and VOD release, which happens with a lot of these smaller horror movies now, so obviously it's eventually going to end up migrating over there. So unless you want to spend a little bit less money, get a cheap daytime seat or something, I think maybe it is more so a wait until you can view it at home sort of bit. But who knows, you know, maybe you could be a lot more forgiving of the aforementioned bait and switch that I called out there. I don't know, who knows? There's many other merits to this film, hence the praise for all of those areas. So once again, I've been Fuego. Liking, sharing, subscribing here, everybody, means a hell of a lot. And if you want to become a patron and tell us what to do, as we like to say, that is also an option as well. We do, you know, straight up requests for things that you would like us to check out as far as films and commentaries, whatever else it may be. So once again, I've been Fuego. Y'all have been Rad Status. And until next time, Spooky Yoogies, remember, stay scared.